Unicorn girl A3. You feel that chill in the frame, where the weird gets weirder and the walls all learn your name. Lolcows screaming like ghosts in a busted mirror glow. Spooky vibes hit hard when the whole room starts to go. Truth cutting like ice right through the air. One more look and you're already there. Unicorn girl A3. Unicorn. Weird gets weirder, baby. Weird gets unicorn girl A3. Unicorn. Think twice before you stare. Teeth in it, and it bites your pride. Every clip, come back with a cold eye on the ride. Those vids, yeah, they stay in your chest. Make your pulse go hard, make you second guess the rest. Truth cutting like ice right through the air. One more look and you're already there. Unicorn girl A3. Weird gets weirder, baby. Weird gets weirder. Unicorn girl A3. Unicorn. Think twice before you stare. Mirror cracked, but it's still watching. Every grin got a shadow crossing. Say the name, let the room go cold. Unicorn girl A3 in the back of your soul. Unicorn girl A3. Unicorn girl. Weird gets weirder, baby. Weird gets weirder. Unicorn girl A3. Unicorn girl. Think twice before you stare.
Hello, welcome in. So Lee made a live and we're going to watch it. I told you it'd be a couple days and he would make one. Give me a second to share my screen. I don't have it up, so just bear with me for a second. I was trying to set up my playlist here. This was posted 35 minutes ago. It says I wasn't ready for this.
Right. What sounded like hardcore fell. Yeah, you can see the attic lids off.
Thank you.
Right.
There we go. I was struggling again, for fuck's sakes. All right, Lee. Why are you going upstairs?
What is it?
What are you accomplishing, sir?
What is it? Like a card, baseball card or something. Pokemon. Computer game. Just shit, really. Shit's fell out.
Well, I'd say it fell.
Always scares me coming up because I know that attic is the one place that bad things happen.
Sure.
So this is the mess.
Say.
Bible, cross. They've come out of there.
They don't care, Lee. My God.
A bit of insulation where they've come out. So that in order, like the attic lid, wherever it is, that was the first noise, and then the second noise we heard is that on that door. And,
oh yeah.
You know, the rest is like the chaos. Stood on some.
Your life is chaos because you choose for it to be chaos. I would just move.
You hate things like that, don't you? Whenever I put something like that in the attic, you always, oh, there it is. You always cause havoc. You always make a mess.
Well, yeah, because that's how he torments you. You've been over this.
Until it's out. The amount of crosses and things you've thrown out.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you're a coward. You hide. Like if you wanted something just shot across there, then that could have been like a fly or something though. Someone mentioned about mirrors over there. Whoa, something weird came down there. They said, why do I not put one in front of like the...
So keep calling it names and keep putting the crosses out because he obviously, the ghost likes the crosses.
The radiator cover, like that's got a mirror on. An orb just went in the mirror there.
They're just working so well for you, sir.
I'm not sure what a mirror does, like a mirror on a mirror. Whoa, I'm seeing loads of weird stuff. You'll never beat me. Whenever you do something like this, whenever you make mess.
He's already beaten you. They literally, physically put hands on you.
It doesn't bother me. I just come upstairs, look, laugh inside, knowing outside.
Yep. He just don't listen. He does not listen.
You are.
That's what happens when you steal a piece of Vlad's castle.
And then I tidy up. Like you've knocked a holy Bible out and a cross. I'm going to put them back up.
And he's going to knock them back the fuck down. I'm just saying, Lee.
Right, I'm hearing pretty strong whispering. And I'm pointing over here because it's coming from like my left side. It could be, I suppose it could be someone outside. I think I saw a car light over there. Yeah, you're never going to win. I'm going to always have the last laugh. I'm going to put the Holy Bible back in now because I know you dislike it. I'm going to put the cross back in the attic because I know this is something you despise. So, cross is back in. That scared me then.
How does he despise it if he can touch it and throw it at you?
Insulation going back in. And the Holy Bible is back in. Now, if they fall out, they're not improper. So now what you're going to do? Because I'm going to come up keep saying it, but you're actually annoying me now. I'm going to come up and I'm going to do some prayers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take all those palm leaf crosses and I'm going to...
You keep saying you're going to go up there. You have yet to go up there.
Stick them onto every beam in the attic. Something fluent at it then. You'll never win. You can annoy me, you can do whatever you want, but you're never going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Oh. See? Keep going. Keep poking it.
Like I'm pumping with sweat now. That's just shit me up. So these are just like, they're just pebbles.
Yeah. It still moved it.
Like proper pebbles. That's a fake plant, but I told you that's hard. That's like pot.
Did you say that's like pot?
Oh, they're standing on them. Do it again.
Hello, Rudolph. Welcome in. Welcome in, hon.
You either do it again or tidy up. Pick that up off the floor.
It ain't going to. You're going to have to do it.
Move it. It's got to be dust, this, what I'm seeing, because the attic's open, I guess. Move it. Look at state at mess, literally. Attic's gone. Attic lid's gone. I don't know what that was. It sounded like a bag. But there's probably lots of bags in there. Yeah. Attic lid's gone.
Oh.
That'd be...
Now he got rid of your attic lid, huh?
You
mean the cover.
And now...
The slot away.
Knock it off.
Stop yelling at it. It doesn't listen to you.
You've just done it. It's got like rubber at bottom as well, that. So watch. You can move it, obviously, like I'm moving it there. But it's difficult. It's just like stick. Knock it off.
What if it doesn't want to knock it off?
Do you want me to go into the attic?
Yes, you've been telling us for a month. You've been saying this for a month. Come on. Either go in or don't.
Bring me holy water. I'm hearing whispering again. There's a police siren, but I'm hearing whispering. Knock it off. Yeah, I'm literally just watching The Goonies. A feel-good film, not my usual horror. People always said there's like horror films make it worse, and it doesn't. You imagine it does, but it doesn't. It doesn't matter what I watch. I probably watched The Notebook more than anything, and it happened.
You watched The Notebook, sir? You've had British football, which we call soccer here in America. You had football on the telly. You had Sopranos on, and you had I think it was Alien versus Predator. Stop it. Stop. You did not watch The Notebook.
Happens with that. You know, when you're watching a horror film, it just scares you more. Recently, I was watching It, and it were a proper
See, you were watching It.
Scary bit. You know, I was like enthralled, and something happened. I think ladders fell it back yard, and I shit myself more or less. But yeah, horror don't affect it. Definitely need to go up into attic. I avoid it, but Stacey's on now, so you know I'm safe. Go up. I just need to do it, you know, in daylight or at least while Stacey's still up. The last video was connecting.
You mean when she's home?
Worked out as well as I thought it would do. There was 3 attacks in it, and you know usually I'm just getting it once or whatever and it hurts, but there were 3, and I thought, you know, I'd have it covered, you know, with like there was like a screen around that area there where I could see once I walked into here.
Yes, and it beat you up. Don't lie.
And then I had the other screen on there. Yeah, but I think tomorrow I'm going to get the Connect out again, put it.
Oh, and we'll wait for
over there because I'm more interested in stuff.
Terrifying, sir. What was absolutely terrifying about this one? I don't know. And for Blade, like, so I'm gonna play some Sir Spooks for her since I didn't get to really have a normal stream last night.
Hello everyone, my name is Sir Spooks and today we'll take a look at 11 scary videos. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to my channel for more scary content. Alright, with that said, let's begin. This next video comes to us from the TikTok account WV Paranormal and features a piece of home security camera footage recorded on September 4th, 2024 at 3:37 in the morning. At first, the camera captures nothing more than a quiet backyard with a swimming pool. Everything appears perfectly still. Then, without warning.
Uh-oh. What is it?
A strange figure emerges from the darkness and slowly makes its way toward the edge of the pool. After reaching the pool, it places what appears to be its hands on the rim and pauses for a moment, almost as if it's looking around the yard. Then, rather than turning around, the figure slowly backs away before disappearing into the darkness. The way it moves is what really stands out. Its posture and movements don't immediately resemble the way most people would normally walk, making the footage all the more unsettling.
Oh my god.
Of course, there could be a more ordinary explanation. Given the distance and the limitations of the night vision camera, it's entirely possible the figure is simply a person, or maybe even an animal, whose appearance and movements are being distorted by the image quality. Unfortunately, no follow-up was ever posted explaining what, if anything, was discovered afterward, leaving the encounter unresolved. Was this simply someone wandering into the yard in the middle of the night, or did the camera capture something far more unusual?
You don't know you're supposed
I'll leave this one up to you to decide.
Oh, you're gonna... Okay. Yeah.
This next video was uploaded to YouTube back in July of 2009 and was reportedly filmed in Belém, Pará, Brazil. According to the uploader, he was home alone with nothing to do, so he began taking a few photos around the house before eventually deciding to record some video instead. While walking through one of the bedrooms, something completely unexpected happens.
Uh-oh. Here we go, guys. Strap in. Better be spooky for spook.
At around the 30-second mark, one of the cupboard doors suddenly swings open on its own, causing the uploader to panic and run from the room before ending the recording. In the description of the video, he explains that after sharing what happened, many people in his life laughed at him and refused to believe his story. Even so, he insists the incident was completely genuine. Then again, it's also possible that the entire thing was staged. With no way to independently verify what happened before the recording began, a hoax can't be completely ruled out. Whatever the truth may be, the uploader's reaction is certainly memorable and has helped keep the video circulating online for well over a decade. Was this a genuine paranormal encounter or an old-school internet hoax? I'll leave that for you to decide. On October 1st, 2025, a TikTok user known as FabbyKme posted a video claiming they experienced something deeply unsettling inside their home. The uploader explains that while sitting in the house one day, they suddenly heard what sounded like their alarm going off. According to them, however, it wasn't actually their alarm at all. Instead, they believed the sound was coming from what is known in paranormal folklore as a mimic. Take a look.
Oh no. Oh no. No. See this?
As the alarm
I'm sorry, that's drawing the line right there. Don't be mimicking my alarm. My alarm is set for a certain time, and that's the time I want to get up or hit snooze.
alarm-like sound continues, another unsettling detail becomes visible. If you look carefully toward the upper right corner of the doorway, you can make out what appears to be a tall, dark figure peeking around the frame. Then, just before the video ends, the figure slowly retreats back out of sight, making the moment even more unsettling. Of course, another possibility is that the figure was deliberately placed there as part of a staged video. Given how clearly it's positioned in the doorway, a hoax can't be ruled out. Whether the uploader really encountered something unexplained or simply created a convincing scare is impossible to know from the footage alone. Was this really a mimic lurking inside the house?
Yes.
Or just a cleverly
Yes, it was a mimic. It was a mimic trying to wake you up at not the time you set either.
staged video? I'll let you decide. Over on Reddit, a user shared a video that begins like an ordinary night out with a friend before suddenly taking a very unexpected turn. At the start of the footage, one of the men is talking while the other records. Everything seems perfectly normal until this happens.
Pues no hay pedo. Oye, loco, ¿qué es lo que se ve ahí atrás del palo, güey? ¡Eso, güey! ¡Loco, corre!
Out of nowhere, a small humanoid figure suddenly sprints across the area at incredible speed, catching both men completely off guard. Rather than running away, they immediately give chase, trying to catch up with the strange figure. Despite their efforts though, it quickly pulls away
Why would you be running after it?
and disappears into the darkness. One of the most common theories is that the figure could be a bombero, a legendary creature from Guarani folklore
It's like a foot tall. Oh my
that's deeply
God.
rooted in the cultures of Paraguay, northeastern Argentina, southern Brazil, and surrounding regions.
Wait,
The
did y'all see that thing? Look at that thing. It's hussy. It's hussy. With a really bad wig.
Pombero is often described as a small, elusive humanoid known for appearing unexpectedly before vanishing just as quickly. It's interesting to compare traditional depictions of the Pombero with what appears in the video, as there are some similarities. At the same time, it's entirely possible the figure is simply a person running through the area, with the darkness and low video quality making them appear much more unusual than they actually are. Whether this is an encounter with a creature of folklore or simply a case of mistaken identity is impossible to know from the footage alone. What do you make of this?
Listen, I'm going to be completely honest. It looks like a child running away from brothers, maybe, or friends messing around in the backyard.
On October 3rd, 2025, a TikTok user known as Marsh Mob uploaded a video from inside his home in Appalachia after repeatedly hearing a strange sound outside during the night. Take a listen.
Oh, hell no. 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 Don't be whistling at 3 a.m. That's the witching hour. He looks terrified. Like, what is happening?
Throughout the video, eerie whistling can be heard coming from somewhere outside the house. At one point, Marsh Mob even turns the camera toward himself to show that he isn't making the sound, leaving him just as confused as everyone watching. A short while later, he uploaded a second video from the same room after hearing more unusual activity. This time, something can actually be seen. Right around here, if you look carefully outside, you can make out what appears to be a tall figure walking across the property before disappearing from view just a few seconds later. Many people in the comments believe the combination of the mysterious whistling and the figure pointed toward a skinwalker, though it's worth noting that skinwalkers originate from Navajo folklore rather than Appalachian folklore. A more grounded possibility is that the
I don't want to know what's outside in the Appalachian Mountains at 3 a.m. I'm good.
figure was simply another person walking outside, while the whistling may have come from an animal or someone nearby.
I don't know no animal that can whistle like that. No.
With only these two short videos to go on, it's impossible to know exactly what was happening. Whether these clips captured something genuinely unusual or not, they certainly make for an unsettling late-night watch. What explanation makes the most sense to you? For this next entry, we're taking a look at another recently released UAP video. This one designated DOW 049. According to the accompanying report, the footage was recorded in 2026 and comes from the Department of the Army. What makes this video especially interesting is how it begins. The sensor is initially locked onto what appears to be a conventional aircraft flying through the area. Then, something unexpected enters the frame. The aircraft can be seen near the center of the screen, while over on the right, a second object suddenly appears. Unlike the aircraft,
Plane.
this object looks like two bright points of light positioned very close together.
Or a
Shortly afterward,
satellite.
the sensor leaves the aircraft behind
My
and
God.
begins tracking the unidentified object instead. For nearly 2 full minutes, the camera continues following the object as it moves through the sky. Its unusual appearance and the fact that it became the focus of the sensor are what make this footage particularly intriguing. At no point does it resemble the aircraft the camera was originally tracking. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean the object is extraordinary. It's entirely possible we're looking at a conventional aircraft or another object that simply appears unusual because of the imaging system or viewing angle. Still, it's easy to see why this footage has generated so much discussion
I'm not
among
creeped
people
out.
interested in
Just saying.
UAPs. As always, make up your own mind. On December 26, 2022, a TikTok user known as KittyK38 uploaded a video showing a strange incident that allegedly took place inside her bedroom. She explains that she and her husband were simply relaxing for the evening when they suddenly noticed something unusual happening across the room. Take a look.
Honey, what is that?
Oh
Okay,
my
guys.
God.
Oh my god.
Okay,
Oh my
okay.
god. Oh my god.
I'm gonna look.
These are the new closet doors, guys. The new closet doors that we just installed. Oh my god. Okay. Nothing. Nothing in the closet. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Be careful.
Why would you tell him to be careful? It's not. My God. Could have been, and it could have been just something driving by.
Okay, no.
Okay, so clearly installing these doors. As you guys can see, we're still dealing with whatever is in our bedroom closet.
As you can see, one of the cabinet doors begins shaking back and forth
It's a closet door, not a cabinet door.
all on its own, while both Kitty and her husband watch in disbelief. According to Kitty, the cabinet had only recently been installed, making the movement even harder for her to explain. Eventually, her husband decides to investigate for himself. He walks over to the cabinet, opens the door, and carefully checks inside, but doesn't appear to find anything that could have caused it. Another possibility, of course, is that the entire incident was staged. Since we only see the footage from one angle, there's no way to completely rule out a hoax. Without any follow-up or additional evidence, it's difficult to know exactly what happened in that bedroom. Perhaps you can come up with an explanation I haven't thought of. Reddit user Fuzzman02 shared a video that he says was accidentally recorded while camping in the mountains of Vermont. The clip doesn't provide much context, and it's unclear exactly what he was filming at the time. At first glance, everything
That is a game camera. Not for video games, but for hunters.
appears completely normal. But if you keep watching, out of nowhere, what appears to be a pale figure can be seen moving through the darkness, before disappearing just as quickly as it appeared. The encounter only lasts a moment, but it's enough to make you do a double take. One of the most popular comparisons made by viewers is that the figure resembles a Fresno nightcrawler, a cryptid often described as a small, pale humanoid with unusually long legs and little to no visible upper
Oh my God. It was probably somebody walking past the camera and you couldn't see it because it was fuzzy.
body. Looking at the footage, it's easy to see why so many people have made that connection. Of course, without any additional footage or context, it's impossible to say with certainty what was actually captured that night.
Exactly.
Whatever the figure may have been, it certainly left behind a memorable clip. Maybe you'll spot something in the footage that
Hey, Dre, welcome in, love. Good to see you.
everyone else has
Hope
missed.
you're doing good.
This next video was posted to TikTok by a user known as Swamp642, who also shared some interesting context about what led up to the recording. According to the uploader, quote, "No one lives in the house down the road from me, but the owners keep the lights on for some reason," end quote. One night while taking out the garbage, he says he noticed what looked like someone standing beyond the tall grass that separates the two properties. At first, he thought he was imagining things, but just to be sure, he grabbed his sister and their daughters. That's when they made a disturbing discovery.
What the fuck is that? Keep going! Keep going! Why are you stopping? Why are you stopping?
Standing perfectly still inside the shed is what appears to be a person with their back turned toward the group. The uploader later wrote, quote, "Apparently whatever it was, or whoever it was, really was standing there watching me. I'm so freaked out," end quote. The figure never appears to acknowledge the group or move at all, making the entire encounter feel strangely unsettling.
No, they're just standing. That's somebody just standing there. That's not. No, come on.
It's entirely possible they simply stumbled across another person standing inside the shed. Even so, if the property really was supposed to be vacant, it raises an obvious question. What were they doing there in the middle of the night? Unfortunately, no follow-up was ever posted explaining who the mysterious person was or why they were there. Sometimes the creepiest mysteries don't need a paranormal explanation. This next video is one I actually featured on my channel many years ago, but I thought it was worth revisiting since many viewers have probably never seen it before. Originally uploaded to YouTube in November of 2011 by a man named Tim, the video documents an exploration of an abandoned house that he and two friends had been hearing stories about for nearly a year. According to local rumors, the property was supposedly used by satanic worshippers to perform rituals. Curious to find out whether there was any truth to the stories, the group decided to investigate for themselves. The house itself is certainly eerie, but the most unsettling moment doesn't happen until much later in the video.
Oh,
Take a look.
Lord. Here we go.
Hey, yeah, guys, we gotta go, man. We gotta go.
Well,
Oh,
Do you hear that?
why was there a creepy doll just standing there? It's crazy.
Oh my God! Go! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh, the police are open. Okay, you gotta go. The door's locked. Get open! It's precious. Go! Help! What's happening? Get off! What's going on? Hang on. What's John?
get up!
What? Dude.
Well, that something's on him, and he sounds legitimately terrified.
Did you hear that? Fuck. Oh my God. Oh, shit. Who is it? Who is it? John. Go! Guys, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
John.
Let's go home.
John.
Let's go. Leave me alone.
As the group continues exploring, the
Like,
sound
there's just a random doll just standing there. Y'all didn't notice that? The hell you doing?
of what appears to be an accordion suddenly echoes through the building. Moments later, another strange rattling noise startles them, prompting all three to run for the exit. During the frantic escape, one of Tim's friends, John, is reportedly attacked by something they can't identify before the group finally makes it back to their car and leaves the property behind. Thankfully, John wasn't seriously injured, and all three made it home safely.
Oh my God, it's hanging there.
Whether the strange sounds and the alleged attack were genuine or not is difficult to determine from the footage alone. Even so, it's one of those older exploration videos that's remained memorable for many years because of how chaotic and unsettling the encounter feels. Would you have kept exploring, or would you have turned around the moment you heard the accordion? We're ending today's countdown with another recently released UAP video from the United States Department of War website. Designated DOW UAP PR-059, the footage was reportedly captured in 2020 by an infrared sensor aboard a US military platform, before later being uploaded to a classified network in 2024, and eventually released as part of the recent document disclosure. Take a look.
Okay, that makes sense. What is it? Oh my God.
For much of the recording, the object appears as a bright, elongated shape moving through the frame, but about halfway through the footage, it begins to take on a much more unusual appearance. From certain angles, the object almost seems to resemble a humanoid figure. Whether that's because the object itself changes shape, or simply because of the viewing angle is difficult to say, but it's certainly one of the more unusual looking UAP videos in the recent release.
Yeah, that is strange.
As with many of the videos released by the Department of War, there's very little context available, making it difficult to draw any firm conclusions. Depending on your perspective, this could be something genuinely unusual, or there could be a perfectly ordinary explanation that simply isn't obvious from the footage. Either way, it's a fascinating clip to end today's countdown on. After seeing all of today's videos, which one stood out to you the most?
The one where the thing was hanging, okay? The doll was just hanging there. It was creepy. Okay, so I wanted to check out some Mr. Ballin. He tells stories, so I'm not going to talk much through it. So I apologize, but it's one of those things you have to listen. You have to listen. Let's see. See if I can find something good. He tells all kinds of different ones. Huh. We'll check this one out. Okay, let me share my screen again. I like Mr. Ballin. Blaze like Mr. Ballin too. He kind of tells the story. He doesn't really like show the video. There's not much video to it, so I apologize, but I'm going to be quiet through most of it so we can hear the story.
Is a collection of 5 fan favorite stories that all sound like they're straight out of a fiction novel, but they're not. All these stories actually happened. Now, these 5 fan favorites have all been completely re-edited for today's episode, so even if you may have heard or seen one or all of them before, this will still feel like a brand new viewing experience. And for all you longtime fans of the channel, make sure you pay extra close attention to find that secret image in one of these stories. The first person to find the secret image and comment what it is and the timestamp of where it appears in the comment section, I will pin your comment to the top of the comment section. Also, Ol Lungy is back again, so make sure you comment your favorite fact he shares in today's video. But before we get into today's 5 stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you come to the right place, because that's all we do, and we upload 2, 3, even 4 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, on the like button's birthday, make sure to mail them a birthday card. But ensure you first booby trap.
Yeah, he likes to make up these quirky little things to say about hitting his like, but
Trap it with fart spray. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's 5 stories. The Tromp family were by all accounts a normal, hard-working household. 51-year-old Mark Tromp and his wife, 53-year-old Kobe Tromp, had established a successful red currant farm and earth-moving business at their property in Sylvan, which is just outside of Melbourne. Their 3 adult children, which were 29-year-old Rihanna, 25-year-old Mitchell, and 22-year-old Ella, all lived and worked with them at the farm. But their seemingly ordinary lives would change forever on Monday, August 29th, 2016. That day, without any warning, the family dumped their passports, credit cards, and cell phones on the kitchen table and ran out the front door, leaving it unlocked. They hopped into Ella's car and drove north. 30 kilometers into their journey, and it was discovered that the son, Mitchell, still had his phone. And so the others yelled at him to throw it out.
hey, Queen of Karma. This is a silent one because he's telling 5 stories, so I'm kind of going to speak before and after each one, so if you don't hear me talking much, that's why. It's Mr. Ballin.
Out the window, and so he did. He chucked his phone out the window. The family drove all day and night until they reached a motel in the New South Wales town of Bathurst, 800 kilometers away to the west of Sydney. The following morning, Mitchell decided he did not want to be a part of whatever it was they were doing, and so he abandoned his family and began heading home. The remaining 4 family members did not go after Mitchell. Instead, they just piled back in the car and drove east to a popular tourist destination called the Jenolan Caves. It was there that the 2 daughters, Rihanna and Ella, decided that they also did not want to be a part of whatever it was they were doing, and so they snuck away from their parents and stole a car and began heading home. Parents, after realizing their daughters had now left, did nothing. They did not go after them. The 2 sisters drove south to the town of Goulburn, where they called the police to report their parents missing. The story made its way into the media, where the family was initially ridiculed for getting lost in the first place and getting completely separated in an area they should know well. This is their country. It's not a remote area. They were near big established towns the entire time. It just didn't make sense. But when police went to the Trump family farm back in Sylvan and they discovered the front door was unlocked, there were credit cards, passports, and phones on the table, suddenly it seemed like there was a lot more to this case than met the eye. And so as this strangeness came into focus in the media, people stopped ridiculing the family and began speculating what caused them to suddenly flee their house. Was it something in the water they were drinking? Was there chemicals on the farm that was screwing up their brain? Were they running from someone? Were they in debt? What was it that caused this strange sudden departure? Back in Goulburn, after reporting their parents missing, Rihanna and Ella inexplicably separated at a gas station. Rihanna just climbed in the back of some utility truck, and Ella hopped in the stolen vehicle and started driving home. Later that night, Ella would become the first Tromp family member to be located by police when she arrived at the farm and police were waiting for her there. Mitchell would arrive back home the following morning after taking a series of trains to get there. Once Mitchell and Ella were reunited, they made a statement to the media outside of the family farm, and as you're looking at them, it's clear they're totally shell-shocked. They don't know what's happened, and they're trying to articulate why their family left in the first place and what they were doing and where they're going, and the best they could do was to say, well, there was a lot of pressure on our family, and it was building up, and these things are just difficult to explain, and I don't really know what we were doing. Mitchell would say that there was a belief that people were after them. There was some paranoia there, but that paranoia was predominantly held by their parents. While Mitchell and Ella were certainly in a state of shock, they did seem mentally stable. The same could not be said for their sister, Rihanna. She was discovered by the driver of the truck she had snuck into after he had driven over an hour away. He had pulled over to check on something. He had gone around the back and then had the life scared out of him when he saw Rihanna just sitting there in a what he called catatonic state. She didn't know her name. She didn't know where she was. She was just sitting there. Rihanna was taken to the Goulburn Hospital where she was put into their psychiatric unit. As media interest grew, the parents, Mark and Kobe, got back in their car up at the Jenolan Caves and drove south towards Melbourne. A day later, on Wednesday, the pair had driven 600 kilometers to the Victorian town of Wangaratta, where they too inexplicably separated. Kobe turned around and started heading north again by means which are still a mystery, and a day later was found 350 kilometers away in the town of Yass in a very agitated state. She was taken to a hospital there, but then transferred to the Goulburn psychiatric unit to be with her daughter, Rihanna. Mark stayed in Wangaratta, and he was there for several days. And during his time there, he was spotted by a young couple really aggressively tailgating them. And then he was spotted again on another day, fleeing from the car he had been driving. Finally, on Saturday evening, all of the Tromp family members were accounted for when Mark was finally discovered sitting next to the road near the Wangaratta airport. He was questioned by police and then assessed by a mental health officer and then was released into the custody of his brother, who was a police officer. And as they drove away, Mark turned around and flipped off the photographers that had converged on the spot. He later released a more contrite statement apologizing for the hurt and concern that were caused by these events, and he also paid respect to the police and the volunteers that went out looking for them. After the investigation, the police determined that nobody was chasing this family. They were not in any danger. The family had also not taken any drugs. They were not in debt. They were not involved in any sort of religious cult. And prior to this strange event, the family had no history of mental health issues. After the dust had settled and the Tromp family was just back at their farm going about their normal life, every media outlet wanted an interview with them to try to learn more about why this strange thing happened. But the family said, we're not doing interviews, we're not putting out any more statements, we just want to be left alone. And so as a result, all people could do was theorize. And the leading theory was that the Tromp family was suffering from something called folie à deux, which is a French term that means madness for two. And what happens is one person who is delusional can pass that delusion on to other people. And this typically only happens in very close-knit families or in very tight romantic relationships. While it's unclear which of the Tromps became psychotic first, doctors say it is clear at some point they were in a cycle of reinforcing each other's delusions if this folie à deux theory is the right one. While the full reasons for why the Tromps went on this strange voyage will probably never be known, the police deemed it a family matter and did not press charges.
Okay. That's creepy and strange for sure. Damn.
Richard Russell, better known as Bebo by his friends and family, was born in 1989 in Key West, Florida, but at the age of 7, he moved to Wasilla, Alaska. He was a standout athlete at Wasilla High School, competing in football and in track and field. After graduating in 2008, he moved to Coos Bay, Oregon, where he briefly attended a community college. While he was there, he met a woman named Hannah Strassner, and in 2011, they got married. And shortly after that, they opened a bakery that they would run together for 3 years. Hannah, who had gone to culinary culinary school, was very detail-oriented, and ran the show at the bakery. Bebo, on the other hand, was not professionally trained and was much more laid back and interested in experimenting with new and wild recipes. In 2015, with heavy hearts, they decided to sell the bakery so they could move to Seattle and be closer to Hannah's family. Once they arrived there, Bebo got a job at the SeaTac airport as a ground service agent for Horizons Airline. It was not a job he necessarily wanted, but they needed the cash. After working at Horizons Air for 4 years as a ramper, someone that moves the luggage in and out of the aircraft, Bebo was given some additional responsibility. They asked him to be on a 2-person tow team. A tow team is in charge of moving airplanes around in between their flights. And so the way this works is one person goes down and drives the actual tow vehicle and hooks that up to the airplane and begins moving it around. And the other person would go up into the cockpit, turn the plane on, and then work a couple of very basic systems to help get the plane to go where it needs to go. The members of a tow team are one of the very few number of people that are allowed to go into the cockpit of an aircraft by themselves. And so Bebo really relished this opportunity. And when he was up there, he found himself fascinated with all the controls, and any chance he got, he would ask a pilot if they were inside of the aircraft to teach him what some of these controls were. But one time, Bebo was flipping some of the switches in the cockpit that he was not supposed to touch, that other pilots had told him about. And the pilot of this particular plane caught him doing it, took exception to it, and reported him. But surprisingly, there were no repercussions. It was just really embarrassing for Bebo. Like many of the other ground service agents working at Horizon Airlines, Bebo was generally unhappy with his job. He felt like it was boring, that there wasn't much upward mobility, and that he was criminally underpaid. But there was one redeeming quality of his job, and that was, in virtue of working for an airline, he got all sorts of free airfare. And so not only did he get to fly for free all over the world, he got to fly basically anytime he wanted up to Alaska to visit his hometown and see his family, something that was very important to him. The people that knew Bebo said he had a great sense of humor, he was extremely friendly, and you could always catch him with his head buried in a book. And his coworkers would say he had aspirations to be an officer in the military. And when all those people that knew Bebo the best were asked, why do you think he did what he did on August 10th, 2018, none of them have an answer. On that fateful day at 1:35 p.m. local time, a passenger airplane owned by Horizon Airlines flew into SeaTac Airport, where Bebo worked. And so this plane was not scheduled to fly for the rest of the day, so it was taxied to the far north section of the airport to a parking spot called Cargo 1. At 7:15 p.m. that evening, Bebo arrived at Cargo 1, and he climbed inside the empty aircraft and made his way into the cockpit. He followed the startup procedure until the plane was on and the propellers were starting to turn. He hopped out of the plane, got in his tow vehicle, and used it to turn the plane around so its nose was pointed towards the airfield. He moved the tow vehicle out of the way and then climbed back inside the aircraft, shut it behind him, and got in the cockpit and began taxiing out towards the runway. For the next few minutes, air traffic control bombarded Bebo over the radio, asking him, "What are you doing? This is unauthorized movement. You should not be heading towards the runway right now." But Bebo never responded. Instead, he just continued on until he reached the beginning of the runway, at which point, despite having no flight experience, minus some video games and fiddling with some switches in the cockpit while he was in the tow team, he managed to go full throttle and get this plane careening down the runway and successfully took off. But that was nothing compared to what he did next. Over the course of his 1-hour-long flight, he expertly performed backflips and barrel rolls and these huge loops in the sky, dangerous maneuvers that even expert pilots might risk stalling the plane and crashing. But he didn't. It was like he'd been doing this his whole life. Onlookers on the ground were shocked to see this passenger airline performing these ridiculous stunts so low to the ground that all over Seattle, you had people filming this plane and posting it to social media. So in real time, it was like the world was made aware of Bebo up in the sky. And so people went outside and just watched as he flew around. But the real story is not the aerial stunts that Bebo was pulling in the sky. It was the strange, calm conversation that Bebo had with the air traffic controller the whole time he's up. An extremely air traffic controller tries to convince Bebo that he really needs to come down and land this aircraft. And he begins telling him where he can go, different airfields, and if he needs to, he can land out in the Puget Sound. But Bebo kind of laughs it off and says, "You know, I wasn't really ever trying to land this plane. I I just wanted to do a couple maneuvers before I put it down. And so as Bebo soared through the sky, this controller tries in vain to convince Bebo to stop what he's doing. And Bebo's just completely ignoring him and cracking jokes with him and telling him how he just loves the scenery up there and how beautiful it is. And then at one point, Bebo becomes remorseful, and he says to the controller that he really hopes he hasn't ruined his day, and he feels really bad for the people that he's inevitably going to hurt. And then in Bebo's most poignant moment, he tells the controller that he's just a broken guy, and he's got a couple of screws loose, and he didn't know it until now. Towards the end of the flight, Bebo tells the controller that he's going to try for...
Okay, I know I wasn't going to do this, but fucking Bebo. He's got goddamn screws loose. God damn it.
one more barrel roll, and if it goes well, he's going to go nose down and call it a night. The controller tries to convince him that it's still possible to try to land, but at this point, Bebo's not listening. At 8:45 p.m., the nose of the plane was seen pointed straight down at the earth. 1 minute later, at 8:46 p.m., Bebo intentionally crashed into a small island off the coast of Seattle. He was the only fatality in the crash. Here is a condensed version of some of the commentary between Bebo and the air traffic controller, along with some of the real footage of him flying the plane.
I just kind of want to do a couple maneuvers, see what it can do before I put her down, you know?
Approach welcome, final runway 16 right.
Welcome. Man, I'm a ground service agent. I don't know what that is.
There is the runway just off your right side in about a mile. Do you see that?
Yeah, I wouldn't know how to land it. I wasn't really planning on landing it. I got a lot of people that care about me, and it's going to disappoint them to hear that I did this. I would like to apologize to each and every one of them. Just a broken guy. Got a few screws loose, I guess. Never really knew it until now. I think I'm going to try to do a barrel roll. And if that goes good, now I'm just going to nose down and call it a night.
Wow. I mean, he was to the point.
How Bebo was able to take off and fly around and pull these stunts without any formal training remains a mystery. Some people believe he was planning this for a long time, which is why whenever he was in the cockpit, when he was in the tow team, he would ask pilots to explain the different switches and toggles and how to use them, and he would feign that he was just curious, when in reality, he was actually trying to learn how to fly the plane. As for the incredible stunts he was doing, it's believed he did learn those in a video game. But even if this is true, that he learned how to fly a plane by asking a couple of questions and playing video games, the chances of it working out and actually successfully taking off and doing what he did are astronomically low. Normal people can't do that. And that's why the internet gave Bebo a new nickname to commemorate the fact that basically no one could have done this but him. And so they named him the Sky King.
That's not the name I would have given him. Bebo, yeah. That's why I said fucking Bebo. The only fatality in that accident. God damn it. Why, Bebo? Why? Should have talked to someone. Oh, Lord. Drugs are not good, people. Acid trip.
On the evening of June 24th, 1986, a 10-year-old boy named Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez bounced around in his seat and smashed his toy cars together in the cab of his father's big red tractor-trailer truck. Juan was so excited he could barely sit still. He always wanted to go for a ride in his dad's big truck. His dad was a long-haul trucker, but his dad always said no. But Juan had just gotten his best report card ever, and so as a reward for doing so well in school, Juan's father had surprised Juan and Juan's mom with this particular trip. Their plan was to drive from their hometown in southeastern Spain all the way across the country to the northern coast. And then once they got there, Juan's dad would offload the cargo that he had driven there. Juan and his mom and dad would stick around and kind of make a vacation out of it, going to the beaches and checking out the beautiful pastures where all the cows would graze. I mean, Juan was super excited. Juan's dad pulled the truck into this big lot with all these other trucks around, and then Juan's dad turned around and began backing the truck up so it could be paired up with the cargo he'd be hauling to the North Coast. It was this huge 25,000-liter tanker that was covered in all these stickers and warning labels, and Juan's father didn't know what this tanker actually contained, but he could tell, whatever it was pretty dangerous and also very important. And so as Juan's dad is backing up...
Sir, they have to know what's in them. They are told. My dad was a truck driver.
Skillfully to line up with this tanker, Juan is just sitting in the back seat, absolutely transfixed at how cool his dad is. I mean, this is like the most amazing thing Juan had ever seen. And so finally, Juan's dad successfully hitched the truck to the tanker. And so once they were all hooked up, Juan's father yelled out the window and said bye to the people he worked with. And then Juan's father put in Juan's favorite tape cassette into the stereo and turned the music up. And then he turned onto the road and began making his way toward the highway. Juan's dad would drive basically all night, and Juan and his mother would basically sleep all night. But they would wake up at about 5 a.m. when Juan's father pulled into the parking lot of a diner that was located just north of the city of Madrid, Spain. They were making great time, so Juan's father told his family they could take their time eating. When the family did finish their meals, they got up and began walking out towards the truck, and little Juan, he turned around and he waved to the waitresses, and they all waved back. And then the family climbed back into Juan's father's truck. And then before long, Juan was curled up in the back seat trying to fall asleep again as his father merged onto the highway and began heading towards this stretch of mountain road called the Somosierra Mountain Pass. About 40 minutes later, a man who was also driving in the Somosierra Mountain Pass was just driving along when suddenly a huge red tractor trailer truck came barreling toward him from behind, shining their lights into his car. And so this man, he sees this truck approaching so quickly, and he tried to get out of the way, but there was nowhere to go. And the truck wasn't stopping. It was honking its horn, and the truck smashed into this guy, which sent his car careening off the road. But luckily, it did not tumble all the way down the mountain. And so this guy's car comes to a stop on the side of the road, and the guy, he kind of comes to and he feels himself. He's worried he's got a serious injury. He did find a little blood on his head, but overall, he felt he was okay. And then he managed to get his door open, and he climbed out of his car. And he looked a little ways down the road, and there was the truck that had hit him. It was now on its side, and it was hissing steam, and it didn't look like anybody inside the truck was trying to get out. Now, even though this guy was pretty shaken up from the crash he had just gotten into, he felt like he was definitely in better shape than whoever was in this truck, and so he decided he would just go up there and try to help them. But after only taking a few steps, this white van came blazing around the corner and came to a screeching stop on the road right next to where this guy was. And then before the guy could do anything, the sliding door to the van flung open, and this woman with blonde hair jumped out, and she ran over to him and she said, "I'm a nurse. Do you need any help?" And so this guy, he's looking at this woman and he's kind of sizing her up, and she did not seem like a nurse. And in fact, for some reason, this guy felt like she just made him really uncomfortable. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. And then he looked past this woman at the van, and he saw the driver looked oddly similar to the woman, except it was a man who was driving, but he also had very bright blonde hair, and he had these striking blue eyes that really stood out even from a distance. And then in the passenger seat of this van was this elderly woman who was just staring daggers at this guy who's now talking to this nurse who's right next to him. And so the guy's looking at the old woman, and the old woman's looking right back, and she really looked mean, like she was not happy to be talking to him. And so the guy finally just said to this woman who was claiming to be a nurse that, "You know what, I don't need any help. Go help them. They need help because they haven't gotten out of the truck yet." The woman just nodded, and then she ran back to the van, hopped inside, and the van sped, the 100 feet down the road to where the crashed big red tractor trailer truck was. And again, the woman hopped out, and she rushed over to the truck, and she climbed on top of it, and she reached down, and she took something out of the truck. But from his perspective, 100 feet back, the guy who had also crashed, he couldn't tell what she had taken out of the cab. But after she took whatever she took, she climbed off the cab. She did not attempt to help anybody inside of the truck. She jumped back in the white van, and the white van sped off down the road, and they were gone. The guy barely had time to process what had just happened before he began to smell this unbelievably powerful rotten egg smell. When help arrived, emergency responders immediately realized they had an environmental disaster on their hands. The big red tractor trailer truck, which was Juan's father's truck, was hauling 25,000 liters of sulfuric acid. And that rotten egg smell they were smelling in the area meant the air was now becoming toxic as the sulfuric acid leaked out and began interacting with the ground and making its way into the nearby river. So before anybody could even go inside of this truck to see if there were survivors, they had to basically cover it and the surrounding areas with hundreds and hundreds of pounds of sand and lime to try to counteract the acid. It would take hours to do this. And in that time, nobody came out of the truck's cab. And then finally, when emergency crews were able to go up to the truck and look inside, they discovered that the vehicle's occupants were all dead. However, there were only 2 bodies. It was Juan's mother and father. Juan was nowhere to be found. Now, one of the theories was, well, when this crashed, maybe the sulfuric acid landed on Juan's body somehow and literally dissolved him. And so that's why he was not found. But that's not possible because it would take much, much longer for sulfuric acid to totally eat away someone's body. And the body would have to be fully submerged in the acid the entire time. So that could not have happened. Rescuers would search the entire area deep into the woods in all directions, looking for signs of this child, but there were none. And when investigators attempted to recreate this accident to try to figure out what actually caused it and why it happened, what they would learn would only confuse them more. Juan's father's truck had nothing wrong with it mechanically, meaning the brakes weren't messed up, the accelerator wasn't messed up. There really was no reason why this truck should have crashed unless it was intentional. That's the only way this could have happened. Also, the truck contains something called a tachometer, which registers every time the truck slows down or stops. And when investigators looked at the record from this tachometer, they discovered that Juan's father had slowed down or stopped 12 different times between leaving the diner and crashing. But the route from the diner to the crash site was a straight shot with no traffic lights or stop signs. Basically, there had been no reason from the diner to the crash site to ever slow down or stop. But again, Juan's father did 12 separate times. And then also there were traces of heroin that were found in a hidden compartment in Juan's father's truck. Now, Juan's parents had no criminal record and absolutely no connection to drugs or the cartel, but investigators did consider a theory that, perhaps a drug cartel ambushed Juan and his family, and ultimately Juan was kidnapped. But there was one more really strange element to Juan's disappearance, and that was that white van that guy saw right after the crash. Multiple people in the area around the Somosierra Mountain Pass said they saw that exact white van because they all remembered the woman and the man who had that same really bright blonde hair. It just was something that was kind of unique and stood out. But the police tried to track down this van and the man and the woman and the elderly woman who was also claimed to have been seen inside the van, but no trace of that van was ever found. And also, police were never able to figure out what that woman actually took from inside of Juan's father's cab before they sped off and disappeared. Missing person posters of Juan went up all over Spain, and almost immediately, loads of sightings were reported of Juan. But every time the police followed up on these sightings, they never panned out. Interpol, which is a major international police organization, called Juan's disappearance one of the strangest disappearances in all of Europe. 1 year after the crash, so in 1987, a driving instructor in Madrid, Spain, was filling out some paperwork in his office when he heard a knock on the door. When he answered the door, he found there was this elderly woman who appeared to be blind, and with her was a young boy who appeared to be about 11 years old. The driving instructor asked them, how can I help you? And he watched as the elderly woman turned and whispered something into the little boy's ear. And the driving instructor, he could hear her whispering, but he couldn't understand what she was saying. It sounded like a foreign language. And in fact, it would turn out they figured out she was speaking Farsi, which is the language spoken in Iran. The little boy listened to the elderly woman, and then after hearing what she had to say, he turned to the driving instructor and he asked in perfect Spanish, "Where's the U.S. Embassy?" The instructor gave them directions, and then the little boy nodded, and then he and the elderly woman, they turned around, they grabbed each other's hands, and they began walking away. And as they walked away, the driving instructor, he just couldn't help but feel like there was something oddly familiar about these two people. And so he flagged them down and he said, "Come back for a second." And so the boy and the woman, they came back, and the driving instructor, he asked the boy, he said, "Do you live in Spain? And if you do, how long have you lived here for?" And when he asked the boy this, The boy immediately looked really afraid and just didn't say anything and kind of just stepped back like this, like he wasn't going to answer. And then the elderly woman, she turned and she whispered something else into the boy's ear. And then after she was done talking, the boy kind of settled down and he looked at the driving instructor and he said, 6 months. And for some reason, at this exact moment, the driving instructor realized why this boy seemed so familiar. He remembered seeing him on all those missing person posters all over the place. And so the driving instructor, he couldn't remember the boy's name. And he goes, hold on a minute. He turns and he runs inside of his office and he finds one of the posters that said Juan Pedro Martinez Gomez. He grabbed it and he ran back out to show it to them and be like, hey, they're looking for you. But when the driving instructor came back to the front door, the boy and the blind old woman were gone. And so the driving instructor, he stepped out, he's looking around, he's yelling out for them. They were gone. Now, it's important to understand that to this day, no sightings of Juan have ever been confirmed, and that includes the driving instructor who claimed to have seen Juan. But to this day, Juan's body has never been found. He's still missing, and his case is still unsolved. In 1887, 35-year-old Robert Ledru was a very talented detective working in Paris, France. He was so talented that periodically he would get called upon by other police departments around the country to help them solve their most difficult cases. And so that year, there was this coastal town in northern France that had this string of sailors that went missing, and nobody had the slightest idea what had happened to them. And so naturally, Robert was called in to investigate. The night Robert arrived in this town, it was very late and Robert was tired, so he went straight to his hotel and he went to bed. The following morning, he got up and he went straight to the local police department to meet the local officers that he would be working with on this investigation. But when he got there, he was told that the missing sailors case had been lowered in priority because during the night, a murder had been committed down on their beach. And so that was now their main focus. And so they apologized to Robert and said, I'm sorry you came all this way for nothing. But since you're here, do you want to help us in this beach murder investigation? And Robert said, sure. The victim was a middle-aged man named Andre Monet, who owned a dress shop in Paris, France. He had recently moved to this coastal town to enjoy the beautiful scenery. When his body was discovered early that morning, it was quickly determined he had been killed by a single gunshot wound to the chest, where the bullet actually went clear through him out the other side, but they hadn't found the bullet. There were no suspects, there were no leads, there was no clear motive. However, they were able to rule out robbery because there was still money in Andre's pockets. And so Robert and the other local officers left the police station and made their way down to the beach, where they began examining the area where Andre had been found. The local officers focused on looking for the bullet, while Robert decided to walk a little ways down the beach to see if there was any evidence that had been overlooked in the initial search. And after only walking a very short distance, Robert noticed some barely visible footprints that appeared to pass right by where Andre's body had been found. And these footprints, they continued past that area and then up a flight of stairs up onto the road where they disappeared. Robert called over the other officers and told them to make plaster casts of these footprints so he could analyze them. What that meant is the officers would literally just pour liquid plaster inside of these prints, and then when they dried, they would pull that plaster out, and it would literally be a 3D model of the foot that had made the prints. And so as the officers are working on these casts, Robert says to one of the officers that these prints looked really odd to him, like they were familiar in some way, but he just couldn't place where he had seen them before. Less than an hour later, when the plaster had dried, the officers pulled them out and they handed them to Robert. And as soon as Robert looked at them, he physically reacted to what he was seeing. It was like he was disappointed. And then without saying anything, he just walked down the beach with these plaster casts until he got to this secluded area where he sat down. And he sat there for hours and hours, just staring at the plaster casts, seemingly unaffected by the sun that was blazing down on him the whole time and the tide that was very quickly creeping up on him. The local officers who were watching this, they didn't know anything about Robert. All they knew is his reputation, which is he is this totally legendary detective, and so they didn't dare question his methods, even though this seemed really odd what he was doing. Finally, by mid-afternoon, Robert would put the cast down, he would stand up, and he would walk back over to the mystified local officers. And when he walked up to them, he would say, "There's no reason to stay at the beach any longer or interview any more witnesses. I think I've solved the case." But then instead of elaborating, he just turned around and walked up off the beach and headed back for his hotel. The local officers just looked at each other and shrugged, and they left too. Early the next day, the bullet that had killed Andre Monet was found on the beach. And so when Robert showed up to the beach, the chief of police handed him this bullet in an effort to help him continue the investigation. And as soon as Robert looked at it, he sighed and said, "Okay, now I know for sure what happened." And then Robert proceeded to break down the murder. He said the killer woke up in the middle of the night on the night that Andre was killed, and he got out of his bed, he put on his clothes, and then he headed down to the beach. There, he encountered Andre Monet, a man he didn't know who was most likely out for a midnight stroll as well. The two men struck up a friendly conversation, but at some point it turned into some sort of quarrel, at which point the killer drew his pistol, shot Andre in the chest, and then fled the scene. Robert told the local police chief that the reason he knew all these details is because he had been the killer. He killed Andre Monet. But he didn't do it on purpose, and he didn't remember, because he killed Andre Monet while he was sleepwalking. He told the chief when he was given those plaster casts of those footprints, he knew immediately why he thought those prints looked so familiar. Because as soon as he looked at the casts, he could tell whoever had made the prints was missing a toe, and as it happened, Robert was missing a toe. So those prints looked exactly like his footprints. And that morning, when he had woken up in his hotel room before even going down to the beach, he had noticed that his shoes and his socks, which were next to his bed, were sandy and damp. And he thought that was so strange because he couldn't remember how they got that way, but he was too busy to investigate. And that night, after he had sat all day looking at the casts and then left the beach, leaving the local police officers totally mystified, he had gone back to his room, and the first thing he did was get his revolver out from under his pillow, and he discovered that one bullet was missing, and he always kept his revolver fully loaded. And so he spent the rest of the night trying to convince himself that this was just one big coincidence. But the following morning, when he was given that bullet, he knew immediately that this was not a coincidence. The bullet that had killed Andre Monet was the same type of ammunition that he loaded his revolver with. And so he had to be the killer. He had effectively caught himself. The police were totally shocked and did not believe this at first. More specifically, they didn't want to believe that Robert, their star detective, was behind this horrible homicide. But eventually, after examining all the evidence, they agreed he had to be the killer. But to test whether this really was sleepwalking and not some elaborate cover-up by Robert, they decided to conduct an experiment. Robert, who was fully cooperative with the investigation, was told to sleep in this jail cell where he would be monitored 24/7 by armed guards, and in this cell with him would be a revolver loaded with blank rounds. And he was told to keep it under his pillow. For the first couple of days, nothing happened. Robert never touched the revolver during the day or when he was asleep. But about a week into this experiment, Robert suddenly woke up in the middle of the night in this trance-like state. He reached under his pillow, pulled out the revolver, and began firing at the guards right outside of the cell. And so this convinced the police that Robert had been telling the truth about what happened to Andre Monet. He really had killed him while he was sleepwalking. A decision was made not to prosecute Robert for the murder. Instead, they decided to basically exile him for everybody's protection. And so from then until 1937, when Robert died, he was forced to live alone on this secluded farm outside of Paris, where the only visitors he ever got were doctors who would only show up during the day and with armed bodyguards.
Oh, Robert, tisks. All right, what's the next one? Strange calls. Here we go, guys.
In the early morning hours before sunrise on April 12, 1990, a 31-year-old man named Nathan Neesmith pushed down on the gas throttle of the fishing boat that he was steering just off the coast of Georgia. And as he did this, he expected the boat to naturally kind of kick into a higher gear and go faster. But as he pushed that throttle down, nothing really happened, and the boat just kind of sputtered along, going about half the speed that he expected it to go. Confused, Nathan stepped away and began making his way out towards the deck, where his younger brother, Billy Joe, who was actually the captain of this fishing boat,
Nathan, didn't I tell you to behave?
was out there taking a nap. And Nathan figured, if there was any issue with the boat, Billy Joe was the guy to talk to. He would know how to fix it. Now, for context, the two brothers were on the first day of a 7-day fishing trip that actually Nathan was not supposed to be a part of. The crew was originally going to be Billy Joe, the captain, and the one who actually rented the boat, along with Billy Joe's nephew, and also 2 other commercial fishermen. But at the last second, those 2 other commercial fishermen had bowed out, and Nathan and a friend had volunteered to go to round out the crew. Now, Nathan and Billy Joe, they came from a fishing family, but it was really only Billy Joe who had pursued the family business. Now, Nathan was perfectly handy out on the water and did know how to fish and knew his way around a fishing boat, but compared to Billy Joe, there was a massive gap in experience. Billy Joe was the fisherman, and Nathan really was not. But Nathan and Billy Joe were very close, and so as soon as Nathan heard Billy Joe was in trouble and needed some more fishermen, Nathan didn't hesitate to say he would do it. Because really, for their entire lives, that was sort of their dynamic. Even though Nathan was the older brother, it was Nathan who looked up to Billy Joe, and any chance he got, he would do anything to help Billy Joe. And Billy Joe really respected that and loved that about Nathan. But now, as Nathan made his way out to the deck to wake his brother up to tell him on the first day of the trip, right as Nathan's taking the wheel, that something's wrong with the boat and I can't fix it. And also, Nathan was enormous, like 250 pounds, well over 6 feet tall. He was huge, this big physical presence, but he really was not mechanically savvy at all. And so again, Nathan is sort of feeling like, sorry, and also maybe even second guessing whether or not it was even a good idea for him to have come along. If he can't even fix a minor issue with the throttle or the engine, what's he doing here? But when Nathan woke up his younger brother and explained the issue, Billy Joe was not upset. He was like, okay, we'll go down below and we'll take a look at the engine and make sure everything is okay. However, when they went down and Billy Joe opened up this hatch to look at the engine, smoke immediately came out, and it was very clear to Billy Joe anyways, that this was not like a minor issue. Something seriously was wrong with the engine. This was a big problem. And so Billy Joe began cussing, he's totally frustrated. And he just told Nathan to, go down below and tell the other 2 to wake up and come help. And so huge Nathan turned around and went down into the bunk room down below. And the second he got down to that level of the fishing boat, he just stopped because there was at least a foot of water in the hallway and in the bunk room when he went inside. And so Nathan screamed at the other 2 fishermen to get up. And so they got up and they're looking down, they're seeing all this water. And so they're starting to panic. And Nathan, he goes back upstairs and he yells to Billy Joe, who's dealing with this engine issue, that in addition to that, it appears the boat is also sinking. And so Billy Joe is like, get buckets, go down there and start bailing out the water. I'm going to call Mayday. And so Billy Joe runs back up to the steering wheel. He grabs the radio, and Nathan and the others can hear him yelling over and over again, Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. And as that was happening, Nathan and the other 2 fishermen put on their life vests, grabbed buckets, and went down below to begin manually bailing out the water. But the second they got down there, it was very obvious the water, wherever it was leaking into the ship, was coming in way faster than they could potentially bail out. But they kept doing it, getting the water out as fast as they could, trying to stay calm. They can hear Billy getting more and more frantic, yelling Mayday over and over again. And then all the lights inside of the ship began to flicker, and then they went out, and they were cast into total darkness. The engine basically had stopped, and it was just silence, just the sound of water rushing into this boat. Also, Billy Joe had stopped yelling Mayday because clearly the boat had lost power and the radio didn't work. And unfortunately, before the power cut out, nobody had heard any of Billy Joe's Mayday calls. So nobody knew where they were, nobody knew they were sinking, and without power, they had no way to communicate to anybody. They were totally alone. So Nathan, Billy Joe, and the others did the only thing they could do. Went up to the main deck, they grabbed their inflatable life raft, they blew it up, chucked it over the side, they grabbed as many supplies as they could, put it in the raft, they all made sure they had all their flotation on, and then they jumped into the life raft, abandoning the sinking fishing boat. Now, once all 4 men were safely inside of this life raft, they were not as panicked as you might think they would be, because they had put enough food and water in this raft to last them at least several days, They all again had their life vests on, so proper flotation. And even though nobody responded to those Mayday calls, it wasn't impossible to think that maybe somebody had heard the Mayday calls and they just had not called back. Maybe there was a rescue operation coming to their location right now. They didn't know, but it felt plausible that they could be rescued. They would just need to kind of ration out their supplies and stay optimistic. However, their optimism quickly faded when, after only being in this life raft for 30 minutes, right as the sun was starting to come up, Nathan began to hear a strange sound. It was coming from somewhere in the life raft. He couldn't quite place the sound, and so at first he kind of tried to ignore it, but then he noticed the life raft was becoming softer, and then he realized the sound he heard was a small hiss. The raft had a leak. And even though the 4 men were able to trace the sound of this leak to the actual puncture, they didn't have a patch kit or any meaningful way to patch up this hole. And so all they could do was just put their hands over this leak and do their best to seal it. But it didn't stop the air from coming out. It just delayed it. And so over the next hour, again, as the sun is just coming up on the second day of their big fishing trip, the raft finally completely deflated, and all 4 men were suddenly bobbing in the freezing cold ocean, surrounded by the wreckage of their sinking fishing boat. And so eventually the men grabbed the biggest piece of wood from the wreckage that came floating by, and it was buoyant enough that it kind of served as like a makeshift raft, but it wasn't buoyant enough to hold all 4 of them at once, which meant, they had to take turns resting on this raft, and then they'd have to get back in the ocean and kind of wait their turn again. Totally miserable. And as this was happening, they just stared at the hull of their sinking fishing boat that was still poking up out of the ocean, just drift farther and farther away from them because the current was pretty strong. And as they watched their ship just kind of disappear into the distance, and they're just kind of drifting out into the middle of the ocean, they were all just stunned into silence. They could not believe how this had happened, and so quickly. And also, what were they going to do? They're in the worst possible situation here. It just didn't seem possible that they could actually survive this. Now, for reference, even though the men had salvaged a lot of their food and water from the sinking life raft, and they had their flotation devices on, that didn't protect them from hypothermia. It wouldn't matter if it was super warm outside. What mattered is the ocean was really cold. And because they couldn't stay on that raft, they had to keep cycling through, going back in the ocean over and over again. It was just a matter of time before they would get hypothermia. And sometimes hypothermia can kick in just a couple of hours. We're not talking days here. This is going to be quick. And all these guys knew that. And so as these men were forced to have these really morbid discussions around who's going to stay in the water and who's going to stay on the raft, Nathan made a drastic decision. Nathan, being by far the biggest physically out of the 4 men, he knew that if he wasn't there right now, the other 3 could easily fit on their makeshift raft and stay out of the water, delaying hypothermia, thereby increasing the odds that they got rescued. And so Nathan did what he always did, and he turned to his younger brother, who he looked up to so much, who he just wanted to help all the time. And Nathan told him, I'm going to swim to the wreckage. I'm going to swim back to the hull of our sinking ship, and I'm going to fashion my own makeshift raft. That way you guys can have this one, and I'll have my own, and we can all get out of here in one piece. Now, keep in mind, it was fairly obvious that the hull of the sinking ship, which was barely visible near the horizon, was at least 3 miles away, just from their own rough calculations. So this is a monster swim to get to that. And so immediately, Billy Joe and the other 3 were like, no, that is a suicide mission. You cannot do that. Do not swim to the hull. You're not going to make it. Now, just to give some additional context here, if you're not familiar with just how challenging swimming in the open ocean is, I'm going to give you my limited experience. So when I was in the military, we had to do 1 5.5-mile open ocean swim. And then also we did a whole bunch of 2-mile ocean swims. And even though we were allowed to use amazing wetsuits and fins, we had a swim partner with us. We had the land nearby to use as a reference to make sure we're going the right direction. We had food, we had water, we were in great shape. Even with all of that, open ocean swims are miserable. You get all the salt in your mouth and your nose. You start cramping and chafing. It takes hours and hours and hours to swim some of these distances, and you're constantly fighting against the waves. It is an absolute chore swimming in the open ocean, again, even with all the right stuff in place. And you got to remember, Nathan is this big guy. He's got this big, bulky life vest on that's going to make it hard to swim. He doesn't have fins, he doesn't have a wetsuit, and he's got no landmarks around him, to make sure he's going in a straight line. Typically, when you're swimming in the ocean, you're constantly looking at the land or some other landmark to make sure you're going in the right direction. He wouldn't have had that. And also, it's this unknown distance he's covering, and there could be predators in the water. I mean, there's so many barriers here that basically there was like a 0% chance this swim would be successful. But Nathan totally understood what he was really doing here. He didn't really know if he was actually going to make it to that boat. Frankly, that was not really the point. What he was really doing was choosing to sacrifice himself to potentially save his brother and the other two. And so even though they were telling him, do not go, do not swim in that direction, you're not going to make it, Nathan just turned to his brother Billy Joe and said, I love you. And then he turned and began swimming. And by some miracle, 11 hours later, right as the sun was setting, Nathan was still alive and still swimming, and he did reach the sinking boat that still had its hull poking out of the water. Now, when Nathan got to the sinking ship, he was almost dead from dehydration, from hypothermia. I mean, he's miserable, but he's made it to his destination completely against all odds. And he climbed up onto this hull, and he found a spot on the hull of the ship that supported his weight. And he managed to tie himself using some rope or maybe his life vest to the hull. So he was anchored in place, and then he didn't get to sleep because the whole time he's thinking, this thing could sink under the water at any point and it will drag me with it because I'm tied to it. Or he could just drift off of it if his rigging kind of came undone, if he was asleep. And so all night, beyond exhausted, he's just holding on to this hull, not really sure what's going to happen, but here he is, just waiting it out. And then finally, when the sun came up that next morning, as Nathan looked around him, he's in the middle of the ocean. He sees in the direction he had come from this pillar of smoke coming up over the horizon. And so Nathan, he rubs his eyes. He can't believe it. He's thinking, there's no way. There's already a ship out here. We're in the middle of nowhere. But sure enough, slowly but surely, this massive freighter ship came into view that was very far away. It's not near Nathan, but he can see it clear as day. And where this ship was basically circling was roughly where he believed his brother and the other two fishermen were still floating. And so he's thinking, oh my goodness, the freighter is going to save them, and then it's going to come save me. And so Nathan just clung onto the hull and watched as this freighter made these big, slow loops right around that same area. And then the freighter came to a full stop, and it appeared to lower something down into the water. It seemed very much like a full-blown rescue operation. And then about 3 hours after he first spotted this freighter, the freighter began to move again, and this time directly towards Nathan. Nathan was so relieved he could practically cry. But instead what he did is he thought, they're going to be here in a minute. I'm finally just going to close my eyes and go to sleep. And so he put his head down on the hull, looked one more time at the freighter, and then closed his eyes. Now, Nathan would be rescued, but it would not be by that huge freighter ship. Nathan eventually had opened his eyes after closing them for a second, and he saw this freighter that had been coming straight for him at some point had kind of deviated and gone in the wrong direction and then vanished over the horizon, never to be seen again. And it would take 3 more days before a separate ship happened to find Nathan. They scooped him up and they rescued him. But even though Nathan had been really crushed when that freighter had gone the wrong way, he held on to this idea that, that freighter had clearly rescued his brother and the other two fishermen. And certainly, even if they couldn't find him, they would go back and they would tell the authorities that Nathan is out there. He swam back to the hull of the ship. We got to go find him. And so certainly a rescue effort would be on the way. And it was true. A rescue boat had come out and found Nathan. So everything seemed to be tracking. And when Nathan woke up inside of his hospital room back on land, his friends and family were all by his bedside, and he's looking around. He can't believe he survived. And the first thing he asks is, how's my brother? How are the other two fishermen? And why didn't that freighter pick me up too? And at this, all the people in the room just kind of looked at Nathan with a very confused look on their face. And eventually they asked him a question that made Nathan burst out in tears. They said, what freighter? It would turn out Billy Joe and the other two fishermen were still missing at this point, and nobody had heard a thing about some big freighter in the area. As far as anybody knew, at least in Nathan's family, that freighter ship did not exist. The search for Billy Joe and the remaining 2 crew members went on for weeks and weeks. And while the active search out on the ocean was going on, the Coast Guard and police were searching through every record they could possibly find of basically any ship that was even roughly in the area where Nathan and the others had been. But despite looking everywhere, there was basically no sign that any ship of any kind had been there beyond the rescue operation that eventually scooped up Nathan. And so again, it seemed very likely that that freighter ship didn't exist. And, it was possible that Nathan in his very deteriorated state had maybe hallucinated it. Although Nathan was adamant, he definitely saw that ship. It did not feel like, a multi-hour long hallucination. It felt like he was watching a ship. He was sure of it. But again, there was just no proof, and so nobody knew what to think of that. And then eventually, even though there was this huge search going on, there was just no sign of Billy Joe or the others. And so eventually the search was called off. And unfortunately, the presumption was Billy Joe and the other two were now dead. 5 months later, on the afternoon of October 5th, 1990, the phone rang inside of Nathan's sister's home. Now, by this point, the victims' families had all tried to sort of restart their lives following this tragedy, but deep down, none of them could truly accept that Billy Joe and the other two fishermen were just gone. They just couldn't do it. It was too soon. It felt like, any moment they were going to get news that, they had been rescued by some freighter ship or something. And so anytime a phone rang in any of these families' homes, it's like they would rush to the phone with the sense of hope that this time it's going to be different. Their loved ones are going to be okay, only to obviously be crushed when that was not the case. But on this day, on October 5th, that phone call that came through in Nathan's sister's home, that one was different. When Nathan's mother picked up this phone call in Nathan's sister's home, she answered it and said hello. And right away she thought, oh, this has to be a wrong number, because the person who was calling was speaking in rapid Spanish and she didn't understand what they were saying. But as she was about to hang up, the caller intermittently throughout their rapid Spanish began saying something in English that Nathan's mother could understand, and it totally shocked her. The caller kept saying Nathan's sister's name over and over again, followed by Nathan's sister's phone number, like on repeat, the name, the phone number in English over and over and over again. And Nathan's mom is so caught off guard by this that she just listened, not even sure what to do. And then before she could ask any follow-up questions, the caller cut the line and the phone call was over. And then a few minutes later, another phone rang in a home that was not far away from Nathan's sister's home. And this other home belonged to the boat owner who Billy Joe had rented the fishing boat from that unfortunately sank and caused this whole tragedy. And so this boat owner, he picks up the phone, he answers it, and just like the call that had come through in Nathan's sister's house, this call was the same. It was somebody calling, speaking rapid Spanish, and the boat owner was about to hang up when he heard something that he understood because it was in English. And what he heard was his own name followed by his phone number over and over and over again. Basically the same type of call that Nathan's mom had just heard. And then before the boat owner could ask any questions, the line went dead. Now, one phone call like this, you could chalk up to maybe a prank or a wrong number or just a really weird coincidence. But to have those two calls happen within minutes of each other and basically take on the exact same form, but different names and different phone numbers, it just seemed way too coincidental to not be somehow connected to the missing fishermen. Because the link between these two households where these calls came in was the doomed fishing trip. And these calls did not stop. Every few weeks after this first time these calls came through, the phone would ring in Nathan's sister's house or in the boat owner's house, and it would be the same thing all over again. Rapid Spanish followed by either Nathan's sister's name and then her phone number, or the boat owner's name and his phone number, just like that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so as soon as this started happening, Nathan's family and the boat owner, they figured out they were both getting these weird calls, and they contacted authorities, which kind of restarted the search for Billy Joe and the missing fishermen, because now it seemed very plausible that maybe Nathan really had seen a freighter, and that freighter really had picked up Billy Joe and the others. And, maybe they had been taken to another country, a Spanish-speaking country, and maybe people were trying to get in touch with the families now to get them back home. Or, of course, there could be a negative side to this, that maybe they were captured by some rogue vessel and were being held by these people who were calling. I mean, there's any number of theories, but it made authorities wonder, hey, what's going on here? And so authorities got in touch with Mexican authorities and other Spanish-speaking country authorities and tried to figure out if there was any chance that there was, a vessel out there around the time that Billy Joe and the others were missing that in theory could have maybe illegally been in that area or something. But despite this kind of exhaustive effort to kind of look again to see if maybe there was a freighter in that area, there was just no evidence that there was. It made no sense, but the authorities said, look, we have no idea what these calls are about. We still do not think that freighter or any ship that even resembled a freighter was out there. We still believe that Billy Joe and the others are dead. But as for the victims' families, they just didn't buy that. They really believed that these strange phone calls were somehow connected to Billy Joe and the missing fishermen. Specifically, these calls must signal that Billy Joe and the others were still alive. They just had no evidence to support that. That is until March 6th, 1991, so almost a year after the doomed fishing vessel sank and Billy Joe and the others went missing. On that day, the phone rang inside of Nathan's sister's home, and she answered it, and it was the voice who spoke in rapid Spanish, but this time they spoke in perfect English, and all they said was, "I'm bringing him home." And then the line went dead. Nathan's sister screamed and she yelled for her husband to call police. They contacted the authorities, and again, it kind of brought back to life the search for Billy Joe and the missing fisherman. And then after this call, there was a near constant presence of authorities on the Georgia coastline, basically looking out to the water, waiting, hoping for Billy Joe and the others to return. But unfortunately, they never did. And following that last phone call where the caller spoke in perfect English and said, "I'm bringing him home," after that, the call stopped. And so to this day, no one has ever been able to actually figure out what happened to Billy Joe and the other two fishermen. They are presumed dead at this point, but there's this one nagging question that surrounds the whole story, and that is, what did Nathan see? Was that actually a freighter picking up Billy Joe and the others? And if so, what did they do with them? Or was Nathan just hallucinating? It's entirely possible, but Nathan has always said he knows what he saw, and that was not a hallucination. As for the families of the victims, they still firmly believe that their loved ones are still out there, and someday they will come back home, and the families just hope they're alive long enough to be there for the reunion. Thank you so much for watching.
That episode was actually on Unsolved Mysteries. That's where I recognized it from. Well, I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna be back tomorrow, and I'm gonna do ghost stories, but I'm not sure which ones yet. I'm going through them, so that it's gonna have to be a surprise. But if y'all want to donate, I got the stuff pinned, or it's in my descriptions, or a like and subscribe will suffice just perfectly. And as always, stay spooky, be kind to one another. Peace out. Good night.